Welcome to Human AI Mashup, where human perspectives meet AI insights. I'm your host, Naveen Balani, the creator of this podcast. Today, we have something special lined up for you. I'll be joined by two AI collaborators who will engage in a dynamic discussion and review of my latest book. Get ready to explore fresh perspectives as we dive deep into the themes, ideas, and innovations presented in the book. It's a unique blend of human creativity and artificial intelligence analysis. So let's jump right in and see what insights our AI friends have to offer.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to really dig into architecting the future.
Oh, cool.
Not with, bricks and mortar though, with code.
Right.
We're diving into Naveen Balani's Architecting the Future: Principles of Modern Software Design.
Yeah.
It's a book that's really got me thinking about software in a whole new way.
Yeah.
It's funny how
Yeah.
we used to think of software as this thing that just made our devices work.
Right.
But Naveen really hammers home the point that it's become such a bigger deal than that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's completely intertwined with every single part of our lives now.
Yeah.
And what's so fascinating to me is how this whole shift really kind of puts this huge responsibility on software creators now.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not just about making the code work anymore, right? We're shaping societies, economies, even politics.
Yeah.
It's a pretty big shift, even just looking back over my own career.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And that's where these core principles of modern software design come in.
Right.
They're not just about making code work, it's about making sure it works well
Exactly.
in this crazy complex world that we've built.
Yeah.
The first principle Naveen tackles is modularity.
Okay.
He describes it as building with Lego blocks,
Uh-huh.
which I thought was a really brilliant analogy.
Yeah, no, it is.
What are your thoughts on that?
It's incredibly accurate. If you think about it, Legos, you can create such diverse structures
Right,
from simple interchangeable units.
right.
Modularity in software is about kind of applying that same idea to code. You break down these big complex systems into smaller self-contained modules that can be, independently developed, tested, and updated.
And Naveen uses a banking application as a real-world example to illustrate this, right?
That's right. Imagine the bank's software as this big Lego castle, right?
Okay.
You've got your drawbridge module, for user authentication.
Right.
You've got your treasure room module for, account management.
Uh-huh.
And then you've got your trading post module for transaction processing.
Okay.
If let's say the drawbridge mechanism needs an upgrade, you don't have to tear down the whole castle to fix it.
Right. It makes perfect sense. That modularity makes the system as a whole more resilient, adaptable.
Exactly. And just like with Legos, different teams can work on different modules at the same time. And this parallel development, it speeds things up. It allows for more specialized expertise, which is essential for complex applications like banking software.
Yeah.
But just as, building a stable Lego castle requires understanding how the blocks actually connect.
Right.
Getting modularity right in software relies on clear interfaces and, well-defined dependencies.
Right.
Otherwise, you just end up with a jumbled mess.
Like trying to jam a square Lego brick into a round hole, that's
Right.
not going to work.
Exactly.
But when it's done right, modularity offers so much flexibility.
It does.
Speaking of making things work smoothly, Naveen also dives into the importance of simplicity.
Simplicity, the holy grail of user experience.
For sure.
Yeah. It's I think we all just kind of naturally gravitate toward things that are easy to use.
Oh, absolutely. And Naveen tells this great story about simplifying the user registration process for one of his products. And it really just highlighted that user-centric approach.
And it's a perfect example of how, these small changes can have such a huge impact.
Totally.
By simplifying, that registration flow, he removed a potential barrier for users,
Right.
making the whole experience more, inviting, more efficient.
Absolutely.
And it's a good reminder that we need to design for the people who are actually going to use the software,
Yeah.
not just for the elegance of the code.
Right. It's about hiding that complexity behind the scenes.
Yes.
So the user just sees a clean, intuitive interface.
Exactly.
Kind of like how we don't need to see all the gears and wires to appreciate a well-designed watch.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah. And speaking of complex inner workings, let's talk about scalability.
Okay.
The ability of a system to handle growth gracefully.
Yes.
Naveen's story about the early days of internet banking,
Oh, yeah.
it really takes me back to when scaling a system was
Yeah.
a much more hands-on affair.
Oh, yeah. You said it. Back in the day.
Right, before cloud computing came along and
Oh,
changed everything.
Totally.
He talks about how back then you were limited by how much you could, beef up a single server,
Uh-huh.
what they call vertical scaling.
Vertical scaling,
Right.
right. Think of it like building a taller tower
Okay.
by stacking more blocks on top.
Okay.
But eventually you hit a limit
Yeah.
on how high you can go before it becomes unstable.
Right.
Horizontal scaling, on the other hand, is like building a wider base for your tower.
Okay.
You add more servers to distribute the load,
Got it.
which is exactly how systems like Netflix, handle those massive weekend streaming surges.
So instead of one, super powerful server trying to do it all,
Right.
they've got a whole army of servers all working together.
Working in concert, that's right. And with the cloud, the scaling can happen dynamically and automatically.
Wow.
So, during peak hours, Netflix can spin up hundreds of instances to handle that increased demand and then scale back down when things quiet down.
Oh, wow.
It's incredibly efficient, cost-effective way to manage resources.
It's amazing how far we've come.
It really is.
But it's not just about adding more servers, though, right?
Right.
Naveen really emphasizes that the architecture of the software itself plays a huge role in scalability.
Oh, absolutely. The way you design the software from the very beginning can either enable or totally hinder scalability.
Okay.
Stateless design, for example. It's a very popular approach.
And what is stateless design?
It basically means that each user interaction with the system is treated as like an independent event.
Okay.
The system doesn't have to remember anything about the user's previous interactions,
Okay.
which makes it much easier to distribute those requests across multiple servers.
So it's like each interaction is a fresh start.
You got it. And this approach is critical for building these highly available and fault-tolerant systems.
Okay.
Imagine if one server in a stateless system crashes.
Right.
It wouldn't take down the entire system.
Right.
Because other servers can just seamlessly pick up the slack.
It's like having a well-coordinated team where everyone knows their role, and if somebody drops the ball, somebody else can pick it up. No problem.
Exactly. You got it.
Okay, let's move on to another crucial principle.
Okay.
Reusability.
Okay.
Naveen is clearly passionate about this,
He is.
especially when he talks about the Spring Framework.
Yeah, the Spring Framework is a fantastic example of reusability in action.
So instead of reinventing the wheel every time,
Exactly.
they can use these pre-built components, like building blocks, to assemble applications more efficiently.
You got it. It saves so much time and effort. And because those components are so well tested, they're widely used,
Right.
you're benefiting from the collective experience of the developer community.
Just like having a head start in a race.
That's a good way to think about it.
Yeah, you can focus on building those unique aspects of your application without having to worry about those foundational elements.
Exactly. And beyond the Spring Framework, open source software in general is a goldmine for reusability.
Yeah.
It's this incredible ecosystem where developers are sharing their code, collaborating on building these really incredible things together.
Right.
But, like we talked about with modularity, finding that sweet spot in reusability is key.
Right.
Components need to be flexible enough to adapt to different situations
Right.
without being so generic that they lose their value.
Right. It's about finding that balance
Exactly.
between being a specialist and a generalist, I
Okay.
guess, in the software world.
That's a great way to put it.
Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about something that doesn't always get the attention it deserves.
Okay.
Maintainability.
Maintainability. Or, as I like to call it, future-proofing your software.
Okay, I like that.
It's often overlooked, especially when you're, rushing to meet a deadline.
Right.
But trust me, neglecting it will come back to bite you.
Yeah.
Ah.
I bet you've got some stories about that.
Oh, let's just say inheriting poorly documented code is a very special form of torture.
Right.
It really is.
Naveen shares a similar anecdote in the book
Yeah.
about a project where the lack of clear documentation created major headaches for his team.
Yeah, it happens all the time.
Really?
Oh, yeah. People underestimate the importance of clear, concise code, modular design, comprehensive documentation.
Right.
All these things might seem, tedious at the moment,
Right.
but they're essential investments in the long-term health and sustainability of your software.
It's like investing in a good pair of shoes.
There you go.
You might pay a little more up front, but they're going to last you longer, save you pain and money in the long run.
Exactly. Well-maintained software is easier and cheaper to update, to debug, to expand upon.
Right.
And then when it comes to things like security updates,
Yeah.
having that maintainable code can be the difference between, a minor inconvenience and a major crisis.
That's a great way to put it. Maintainability isn't just about making life easier for the next developer who touches the code. It's about ensuring the longevity and the resilience of the software itself.
Well said. That's a really good way to put it.
Speaking of things that are essential for long-term well-being, let's talk about sustainability.
Okay, let's do it. Sustainability, the often overlooked aspect of software development.
Right.
We tend to think of software as this intangible thing,
Yeah.
but it has a very real environmental impact.
Yeah, it's easy to forget that all those servers out there storing our data,
Right.
running our applications, they use a ton of energy.
Yeah, massive amounts.
Not to mention all the devices we use to access that software.
It all adds up, And
Yeah.
that's why it's really encouraging to see somebody like Naveen dedicate like a whole chapter to these green practices in software development.
Right.
And, it's not just about being, environmentally responsible. It's about realizing that sustainable software,
Yeah.
it's often just better software.
Right. And he gets into the weeds on it too.
Yeah, he does.
Like, I had heard of carbon-aware computing before,
Yeah.
but he breaks it down in a way that I think anybody could understand.
It's such a fascinating concept, though, right?
Yeah.
The idea that we can actually design software to, adjust its energy consumption
Wow.
based on the time of day.
Okay.
Or, the availability of renewable energy sources in a particular location.
Interesting.
Imagine a data-intensive process, right?
Yeah.
That's automatically scheduled to run when solar power is, most abundant.
That's wild. That's like your software becoming this, conscious citizen of the planet,
Yeah, pretty much.
making these responsible choices
Exact.
about its resource usage.
And Naveen points out that, integrating that kind of carbon awareness into your development workflow, it's not as hard as you might think.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there are tools available, like the Software Carbon Intensity Standard,
Okay.
developed by the Green Software Foundation,
I see.
that can help you actually, estimate the carbon footprint of your code
Wow.
and explore ways to, reduce it.
That's amazing. I had no idea. It's like having a carbon calculator
Yeah.
designed for software.
Mm.
Speaking of calculators, Naveen also dedicates a whole chapter to building economical software.
Right, which is so important,
Yeah.
especially these days.
And I love how he emphasizes that it's about more than just being cheap.
Absolutely. It's about, getting the most bang for your buck,
Right.
maximizing value
Yeah.
throughout that entire software development lifecycle.
Right.
And, sometimes spending a bit more upfront
Yeah.
on things like robust architecture,
Okay.
thorough testing can actually save you a fortune down the road.
Yeah, that makes sense. He offers some really practical advice too,
He does.
like using cloud cost calculators to kind of get a handle on expenses
Yes.
and adopting a FinOps strategy to manage spending.
Yeah. I love the whole FinOps thing.
Yeah. What is that exactly?
So FinOps is all about, really aligning your tech spending
Okay.
with your business goals.
Right.
It's about making sure that, every dollar you invest in software
Yeah.
is actually giving you a return on that investment.
Right. You want to make sure that it's worth it. He also talks about the potential cost savings of using open source software.
Oh, absolutely. Open source can be a game changer,
Yeah.
especially for, startups, smaller companies.
Right.
It gives you access to this, high quality software without the huge price tag of those, proprietary licenses.
Right.
But it's important to remember that just because it's open source
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily mean it's free. You know what I mean?
Right.
There are still costs associated with,
Yeah.
implementing it, customizing it, supporting it.
Right. You got to factor in that total cost of ownership.
Exactly. But even with that being said,
Yeah.
open source can be a huge win
Right.
for companies that, really want to build amazing software
Yeah.
without breaking the bank.
And it's not even just about the financial side of it.
Right.
Open source really fosters this incredible spirit of collaboration
It really does.
and innovation within the developer community.
Oh, 100%. And that collaborative spirit, it's more important now than ever.
Yeah.
As we're moving into this future where, software is so deeply intertwined
Right.
with, every single part of our lives.
Yeah.
Which brings us to, I think, another really crucial aspect of modern software design,
Okay.
and that's ethics.
Oh, yeah. This is where it gets really interesting.
It does,
It's one thing to build software that works,
right?
But it's a whole other thing to build software that's responsible.
Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah.
That doesn't cause harm.
Exactly. And as software becomes more powerful, more prevalent,
Yeah.
these ethical considerations, they become absolutely crucial.
Yeah, right.
We have to move beyond that mindset of just, shipping features.
Right.
And start really thinking about that broader, societal impact of our creations.
It's like we're no longer just builders now.
Yeah.
We're almost becoming
Right.
architects of this digital future.
We are. We really are.
And with that comes this huge responsibility
Yeah.
to consider the consequences of what we design.
Absolutely. And we need to be mindful of, potential biases that can creep into algorithms.
Right.
Protect user privacy,
Yeah.
ensure that things are accessible to all users, and just be really transparent about how our systems work.
Yeah, build trust with the people who are actually going to use this stuff.
Exactly, 100%. And nowhere are those ethical considerations, I think, more important
Yeah.
than in the world of AI and machine learning.
AI is such a game changer,
Yeah.
but it brings with it this whole other set of ethical challenges.
It really does. As AI systems become even more sophisticated, more autonomous,
Right.
we really have to think long and hard about how we design them
Yeah.
to really align with our values.
It's like we're not even just writing code anymore. We're almost
No.
creating these digital entities.
We are. That's a really good way to put it.
Yeah.
It underscores this need for transparency and explainability in AI systems.
For sure.
Users really need to be able to understand how these systems are making decisions,
Absolutely.
especially when those decisions can really impact their lives.
And what about accountability?
Oh, that's a big one.
What happens if an AI makes a mistake
Right.
that has these really negative consequences? These are things we really have to be thinking about.
We do. We have to grapple with them now. As we're kind of, giving over more of this decision-making power to
Right.
AI, we need to establish some really clear lines of accountability.
Right.
We need to develop these really robust frameworks for dealing with unintended consequences.
Yeah.
It's uncharted territory in a lot of ways,
It really is.
which is why it's so important
Yeah.
to be having these conversations about ethics and responsibility right now in the field of software development.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's move on to another critical aspect of software design that's, probably more important now than ever. Security.
Right. It's more important than ever.
I love how Naveen uses his own experience with the blowfish encryption algorithm
Yeah, that's a great example.
to illustrate just how much the security landscape has changed.
That story really resonated with me. What was considered secure a decade or two ago
Right.
might be laughably easy to break into today.
Right.
I mean, the pace of change in cybersecurity is just relentless.
Yeah. He talks about how the CIA triad,
Right.
confidentiality, integrity,
Yeah.
availability,
Yes,
those are still the bedrock principles
they are.
of
Or
information security.
even in today's crazy hyper-connected world.
Yeah, so for people who might not be familiar, can you break down the CIA triad a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So confidentiality is all about making sure that sensitive information is only accessible
Right.
to those who are actually authorized to see it.
Right.
Integrity is about making sure that data is not being tampered with,
Gotcha.
that nobody's making unauthorized changes.
Okay.
And availability just means making sure that the systems and the data are accessible to the people who need them
Okay.
when they need them.
Got it.
And he really emphasizes that security isn't just about the technology, it's about people and processes too.
Oh, absolutely. You can have the best security tools in the world,
Right.
but if your employees are falling for phishing scams or using password 123,
Exactly.
you're still vulnerable.
Right. Your system is wide open. Things like security awareness training, strong password policies, robust incident response plans.
Right.
Just as important as having all the fancy firewalls and encryption.
It's like having a state-of-the-art security system
Right, yeah.
on your house, but you leave the front door wide open.
Exactly.
Speaking of evolving security models, Naveen also talks about this idea of zero trust,
Yes. Zero trust. It's a big deal.
which it seems like is getting a lot of attention these days.
It really is, and it's a pretty big change
Yeah.
from that traditional perimeter-based security model.
Okay.
It's based on this idea that you should never just automatically trust any user or any device,
Right.
even if they're on your network.
So it's like instead of having this hard outer shell protecting everything inside,
Right.
you're constantly checking credentials at every door.
Exactly. It's way more proactive, more granular approach to security.
Right.
And it's just essential in this world, cloud computing, remote work,
Wow.
all these systems talking to each other. And then, of course, like we keep talking about, security gets a whole other level of complexity when we bring AI into the mix.
Right, because AI systems are often trained on these like massive data sets,
Exactly.
which, those themselves could be vulnerable to breaches or manipulation.
Absolutely. And then on top of that, you've got to figure out how to secure the AI models themselves. I mean, if an attacker gets into the model,
Right.
they could totally mess with it, make
Yeah.
it give bad outputs, even dangerous ones.
Right. It's like teaching an AI to drive a car,
Right.
but forgetting to install the brakes.
That's a good way to put it. But yeah, when you're talking about securing AI, you need this like multi-layered approach, data security, model integrity, access controls. You got to constantly be monitoring everything. And it's changing so fast. Staying ahead of the bad guys is a full-time job.
It sounds like a fascinating area to work in.
Oh, for sure.
So, we've been talking about all these principles.
We have modularity, simplicity,
Scalability,
reusability.
maintainability, sustainability, economic design, ethics, security.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. But it's clear that, this whole modern software design thing,
Yeah,
it's about so much more
it really is.
than just writing the code.
Absolutely. It's about like braiding all those principles together
Right.
to create software that's, not just functional, it's responsible.
Yeah.
It's ethical.
Right.
It's sustainable. And that's what Naveen calls responsible design, right?
Yeah.
Like the culmination of all of this is, you're building something responsibly.
It's about having a purpose
Exactly.
and really understanding the impact
Mm,
that our creations can have on the world.
100%. And it's not just asking, like, can we build this thing? It's, should we build this thing?
Wow.
And if we do, how do we build it right?
Right. And I love how Naveen illustrates that point, right?
Yeah.
With those like contrasting use cases. In that last chapter,
Oh, yeah, those are great.
you've got that like traditional banking system.
Right. The old way of doing things.
And then on the other hand, there's this like cutting edge AI powered financial advisor.
Totally different approaches, but
Right.
the principles of responsible design,
Yeah.
they're essential for both.
Right. Because you still need to ensure accessibility,
Exactly.
transparency for all users. You have to be aware of any biases in those algorithms.
For sure.
Make data security and privacy a priority.
Right. You can't forget those.
And you got to design for long-term sustainability.
It all matters.
Yeah. It's really about like changing our whole mindset
Right.
from just building tools
Right.
to shaping a better future
Yes.
through technology.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's like realizing how much power, how much potential software has
Yeah.
and using it the right way.
Well said.
Yeah.
So as we're wrapping up this deep dive
Yeah.
into Naveen Balani's Architecting the Future,
Such a great book.
I think the biggest takeaway
Yeah.
is that this whole future of software design, it's about way more than just the ones and zeros.
Mm-hmm.
It's about the impact that code has on our world
It really is.
and the responsibility we have, as the creators
Yeah.
to design that impact with intention and, ethically.
100%. It's a call to action,
Right.
I think, for everybody who's involved in making software to think bigger, be bolder, and to like code with a conscience.
I love that. Code with a conscience. What an inspiring message to end on.
I think so.
Big thanks to you, our expert, for sharing all your insights today.
Oh, this was fun. Thanks for having me.
And to you, the listeners, for coming along on this deep dive with us.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everybody.
Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep asking those tough questions.